In this video, I'll be telling you why these analog horror videos failed miserably. Analog horror has exploded in popularity in recent years. However, there are a few stinkers that have been released out in the wild, and they have made some very major mistakes. As someone who has been interested in internet horror, I went out hunting for those stinkers, watching them, analyzing them to see why they flopped. I even live streamed my first time reactions to these videos. So let's get started with... We're going to start off with the most infamous analog horror series in this video, especially because of the creator, Urban Spook, whose reaction to the criticism has sparked major controversy, but we'll talk about that a little later. Now, as a quick synopsis, The Painter is basically about a serial killer who would terrorize and murder people and would just leave behind these mysterious and eerie looking paintings. Now, these paintings are supposed to be mocking their victims, crudely drawing them in a way that makes them look super deformed, especially after they met their fate with the murderer. And the authorities in the series, of course, have no goddamn clue on who the murderers could be and, are seemingly incapable of finding them. So as I watched this series on my live stream, I noticed a couple of things that definitely made it apparent to me on why this series was super controversial. So I guess this is the whole gimmick of this analog horror. First of all, it tries way too hard to be edgy. Just shock value art, there's nothing really to it than just it was gore. Most, if not all, the murders that happened in the series were conducted in the most gruesome ways possible. The paintings and the titles would always be some kind of horrific or body mutilation, dead kids everywhere. Episode 6 literally has a segment where it's implied that a woman got to death by a horse, and every episode just seems to up the ante by becoming more and more gory. Some episodes even got age restricted because of how graphic they've become, and the music starts to get more and more sinister as each episode progresses, even to the point where it gets literally so loud that I had to mute the videos to even just comprehend what's happening, really trying to squeeze all the spooks out of you. Episode 3 is notorious because it heavily implies child rape. In the first episode, there's a painting called Toy Corey, and this is the painting that started all the drama that we'll talk about later on, which leads to the third episode where it talks about the Beck twins, Corey and Margaret. I'm sure you can see the connection between the two. And also in that third episode, Margaret is found dead with a brick shoved down her throat with the word meat written on it. And it's obviously not trying to be subtle on what happened to Margaret. It just seems like every episode is literally just some gore fest where it just details each and every murder in a meticulous detail, talking about how each person's gotten brutally murdered and everything. And it doesn't really serve any purpose or anything. And that just leads to my second criticism. The series is repetitious. I can literally make up a goddamn episode of The Painter off the top of my head.
On April 2nd, 2006, the Thomas family hasn't been heard in 3 days. Authorities have showed up and they saw a gruesome murder site. Andrew Thomas was found ripped in half. His fingers were cut off and his toes were missing too. Also, they wrote
doo-doo fart, doo-doo poo-poo, doo-doo fart
on Andrew's arm with a red marker. While searching for the rest of the family, authorities discovered a painting that was hidden behind the living room couch. Here is the painting.
There is zero plot progression whatsoever. Every episode literally goes how I just described back then. Each video is just a huge exposition dump about how each person got meticulously murdered and showcasing off all the scary art. I've read some Reddit posts where they try to argue that there's some sort of plot or how there's hidden details sort of hidden away in each of the video frames. But I'm just thinking, what's the point of hiding all these little details everywhere when each video is just an exposition dump of how these murderers cut some dude's dick off? It's just the same tired formula over and over and over and over again. To just slide off the negativity train, I will say the art is genuinely terrifying to look at. You know, it's definitely the most defining feature of this analog horror series. And the music itself is also pretty good. Really serves as a good backdrop to stir up some paranoia amongst the viewers. I just feel like this series would be a lot better if it sort of just dialed down on the story details. I wish it was some sort of like TikTok slideshow or some art exhibit, you know, and they just give like a loose plot detail in the title. And maybe that's what the creator didn't intend. I don't think they intended for many people to dig deep into the plot details. You know, they didn't really think about the writing that much at all. Now, my main question is, what is the point of having these killers do the most vile and evil shit possible in the series, you know? Of course, some people have argued on the internet that murderers have done this in real life and have probably done even worse things that happened in the video, but this is all fake, you know? This isn't really documenting a real murder or anything. So I'm just wondering, why did the creator just dial it up to 10? Is it some sort of like weird thing they're into or something, or are they just trying to make shock value? When The Painter was first released onto YouTube, it made a huge splash in the analog horror scene. Probably not in the way Urban Spooked intended to, especially because they started to have a meltdown on Twitter after people began to criticize the series. They made tweets calling people pussies and autistic for not liking their extreme horror. And I wouldn't be surprised if the negative criticism and Urban Spook's reaction to it is the main reason why the later episodes started to really up the ante on the gore factor. And yeah, their reaction really left a sour taste in the audience mouths for this series. The main problem is that it's too goddamn edgy. The edginess doesn't really serve to progress any plot at all whatsoever. Literally just seems like they're making gore porn for the hell of it. If I had to give it a score, I'd give it a light 1 out of 10. Let's move on to the next series. The Smile Tapes is the next analog horror series that we're covering. Created by Patoriku in 2021, the series takes place in the 90s, where a new and mysterious drug called Smile started circulating in the American black markets, causing a grinning epidemic. Now, Smile is made using spores from an unidentified fungus, and if you were to take this drug, you would experience major side effects such as mania, uncontrollable laughter, violent tendencies, and of course, smiling. The series had 4 videos related to it, and it's really like a super short analog horror series. I think the entire series just takes like over an hour to complete. Now, one of the biggest problems I have with this series is definitely the intro videos, Volume 1 and first half of Volume 2. It just doesn't really seem that interesting. I don't think the series gets even interesting until Volume 3 in my opinion. The first half of Volume 1 is just some PSA about the Smile drug, just dumping exposition on how the fungus works and how it affects people. Just like one minor criticism is the fact that it uses those toilet people that you see on like the toilet, on like restroom signs and everything. I thought that was like a little goofy, but I just can't get over the fact that the fungus is literally just Germa sus smiling filter. Having the sus guy face as the big scary virus symptom kind of took me out of the immersion, you know? It kind of felt a little goofy, especially because the series treats it as like the first real scary thing that happens. What the f*** was that? What the f*** was that? What the hell was that? And then in Volume 1, it just abruptly cuts to a journal of some dude named Sean G, which felt super random, you know? Sean just talks about getting exposed to the Smile drug while shopping for groceries, and then this happens. Oh man. I woke up. Bruh. Out of all the pictures they could have used for Mystery Man in My Dreams, they used that one? Are you serious? Everyone has used this goddamn picture for the Mystery Man in their dreams. Everyone knows who this guy is, man. This is like using a stock sound effect. Everyone knows this guy. He got his own Wikipedia page. Seeing that picture of this man in your dreams really just took me out of it, you know? I don't know why. I feel like anyone who is slightly familiar with internet horror already knows who this guy is. I think at the end of the day, I think this criticism is sort of minor in the grand scheme of things, but I just feel like if you're gonna use a picture of some man that invades people's dreams, why would you use the legit poster face of that guy that invades dreams, you know? And if you don't know, this man picture was from a viral ad campaign on the internet where it basically had a website that asked people, have you seen this man in your dreams? And it shows this guy's picture. And in this volume, the picture wasn't really used in an interesting way, you know? It felt kind of lazy. So this picture is supposed to represent the main baddie of the series. Him. Apparently, whoever him is, they're responsible for creating and spreading the smile drug across America. And in the later videos, the picture is edited to the point where the man in your dreams doesn't really look recognizable anymore. It actually looks kind of terrifying. And I kind of wish the creator used this version of him from the start. The later entries do significantly improve because it just moves on from the typical VHS font exposition dumps and includes more live action footage and even voice acting, which is not bad.
3 weeks since you were diagnosed with the fungus.
And even the imagery gets genuinely terrifying and creepy right after the first half of volume 2, I would say. I just feel like I couldn't really get into the series that much because I think the idea of smiles being scary has been done to death in the horror genre, and also the series just documenting people's lives in an apocalyptic world with zombies attacking everyone has also been done to death. These two themes kind of made the series feel really generic, in my opinion, and there's no really any main character to follow or any story to follow either. Most of the videos are just telling the audience what the virus is and like what it does to people and how it spreads and everything. And yeah, we get some little glimpses of characters to follow, but they don't really last that long, I would say. And most of the stories they presented aren't that interesting. Now, the series has ended, and it is a really short series, so if you want like a quick bite of some analog horror, I want to say this is a terrible, like a fully awful series to watch. I will say the ending is pretty abrupt. I have read on the internet that apparently this abrupt ending happened because the creator was kind of burnt out and wanted to move on, especially after the series exploded in popularity and they get like assholes like me criticizing it and everything. I don't think this is like super terrible. And if what I described sounded kind of interesting to you, I would suggest checking it out. But for me, if I had to give it a score, decent 5. Okay, so Sneaky Snack Bar is another analog horror series created by Stuffy. And like the first thing that I noticed when I watched this series is that it's an analog horror series about animatronics that kills people. And I'm sure that is very similar to other analog horror series such as the Walton Files and FNAF VHS series. I do want to point out that Sneaky Snack Bar was Stuffy's first ever attempt to do an analog horror series, and I will say it definitely shows. During my live stream, I did have some thoughts and opinions on whether or not I should even feature this series to begin with, you know, because it's someone's first time, you know, they're not gonna really nail it out of the park their first times, you know, like shit, you can look at my first videos, they're goddamn awful. And I just want to keep that in mind as I talk about this series, that, you know, it's the first time someone has made an analog horror series, right? Now, the art drawn for the series is all right. I will say it's pretty amateur, but it's definitely better than what I can draw. But unfortunately, the art does hold back on the creepiness a little bit. I appreciate that the series isn't super reliant on jump scare boogaloo and actually try to follow a plot. However, the plot is very similar to the Walton Files, especially with all the corrupted training videos and animatronic killing kids and all that. I couldn't really get into the series that much, and nowadays the series has been unlisted from YouTube. I had to go on the Internet Archive to even get footage of the series. I have read on the internet that the creator has sort of abandoned this series. I want to say abandoned, but I guess they finished this series and they've moved on to other content, which serves as a perfect transition. But if I had to give this a score, I would say this was unfinished, and it's pretty clear that this is the creator's first analog horror series ever out of 10. The Macabre Experiment, another analog horror series created by Stuffy, where the whole premise is that it adapts popular creepypastas such as Smile Dog, Jeff the Killer, Ben Drowned, and others. Basically, the series is trying to retell these iconic creepypasta stories in the signature analog horror format. Now, when I first heard of this series, I thought that was a really good idea on paper. Going into that, I was low-key kind of excited to see what this series had to offer, especially because now that they've had experience with Sneaky Snack Bar, and I have heard a lot of good things about it, I kind of went in sort of expecting something pretty spectacular. However, I will say the execution does leave a lot more to be desired. Like, for example, the Smile Dog video. The intro is literally almost the same as the original story. Instead, we have two characters, Wyatt and some mysterious guy interviewing him. They are basically the vehicle in which this series provides the intro to Smile Dog. So Wyatt got sent a message that contains spooky dog image, and he basically got told that if you don't send it to 5 more people, the doggy's gonna get you. Now, my whole problem is that Wyatt is just expo dumping onto this detective and really doesn't really add any interesting spins or visuals to the Smile Dog story. And then it just cuts to a 40s cartoon where it has a dog trying to sleep, but it's haunted by this mysterious figure, which literally looks like a ripoff from one of the Mandela Catalogue jump scares. And again, to me, I don't see how this adds to the Smile Dog mythos. How does this dog cartoon relate to anything that Wyatt even talked about in the beginning, you know? I don't see what this section adds other than to just add some run-of-the-mill analog horror jump scare to look so spooky. Ooh, spooky face! And then the video does another jump cut to a field of flowers with some spooky whispering commentary where they just talk about having the most wonderful dream before the Smile Dog photo pops up. And I will admit, this is the most scary part of the video. Then it's dead kid time. Sorry, Sadie, looks like you got jebaited by Smile Dog. And we also get some convenient exposition about what happened to Wyatt and the interviewer after they both looked at the image. This first episode really kind of disappointed me, unfortunately, especially because I was kind of excited to see how these creepypastas could like adapt to analog horror. You know, maybe I see some super interesting visuals and everything, but it really just feels like I just got like narrated the entire story, plus with just some bunch of filler in the middle and everything. You know, I don't think this version of Smile Dog really added or did anything interesting. Now, the next episode that I'm honestly the most critical of would be the Ben Drowned episode. See, another problem, and I guess this is a problem with most of these analog horror videos, is that they just get really repetitious, you know? The Ben Drowned episode literally starts the same way as Smile Dog. We get an interview by some guy named Oliver, who, again, his whole purpose is to just provide the intro of Ben Drowned. Literally says the same thing in the same story. Found the game at the yard sale, bought it, popped it into their N64, and started playing when suddenly crazy shit starts happening. Now, my biggest complaint with this video is that the whole entire middle part is literally just the original footage provided by the story's creator, Jade Usable, with just a VHS filter slapped on top of it. Other than that, there is literally no alterations to the footage. I have seen this game footage so many goddamn times as a creepypasta fan and as a Ben Drowned fan. I got really disappointed when I saw this, and there are some jump scares sprinkled along the video. To their credit, the pictures that they created for these jump scares are pretty spooky. I will say that. They are kind of terrifying to look at. But again, this series doesn't really innovate or adapt these creepypasta stories in an interesting way. I guess if you really enjoy the analog horror aesthetics, you'd probably enjoy these more than I do. And I feel like at this point, I'm kind of ragging on this series a lot, especially because Stuffy has written about their feelings regarding Sneaky Snack Bar's negative reception and how it's kind of ruined their motivation to create analog horror. And if Stuffy, for some reason, ever comes across my video somehow, I just want to say I'm not a hater. I think the idea of adapting creepypasta stories to analog horror is intriguing, but I just want to say the execution is sorely lacking, unfortunately. If I had to give this a score, I have to give this a light 3 out of 10. Like I just keep saying, I think the idea like sounds so good, but I don't really see the point of adapting these stories in a way when it doesn't really add anything. Oh boy, another victim of trying to be too edgy for you. Now, this is another infamous analog horror. It's not even an analog horror series. It's just one video. And I don't know if the creator intended it to be a series or anything, but their first outing really caused some flames to be heated up on the internet. The June 6, 2006 Nickelodeon hijacking incident. So this is another run-of-the-mill hijacked analog horror video where it showcases the SpongeBob episode Something Smells getting hijacked, and SpongeBob becomes this weird pair of holes with eyes and fucking flames in the background and everything. That motherfucker looks like CDI Ganon. And of course the title is called June 6, 2006. You know, 666. Wow, very scary and original. And then he just jump cuts to a bunch of random images before showing the end credits, where it has some text directed at Steven Hillenburg, SpongeBob's creator. Now, the text basically accuses him of murdering his wife before it does spooky jump scare.
Hey, Nick.
Oh, Jesus Christ. And then transitions into this infamous image. Yeah, I'm not sure what the reactions the creator expected from this, but using the name of a beloved cartoon creator and just absolutely smothering it for your scary little video is honestly fucking disgusting. This is urban spookitis that's happening right now. And there was a huge internet backlash against this video. Tons of people calling out the creator for including such an insensitive moment in the video. And hey, maybe this is what the creator wanted, you know? Maybe he gets off on, yeah, you know, I'm so fucking edgy, you know, I love when people hate me. And it just resulted in their channel getting banned. And it just became the internet punching bag for disrespecting Hillenburg. And like, shit's not even scary. At least Urban Spook had some pretty scary paintings to go along with it. None of this shit in this SpongeBob hijacking is scary at all. 0 out of 10. If I had to give it a score, doesn't matter.